Hi guys, I'm Amy, and welcome to my podcast, Spill the Teeth, where I spill the tea on all things dentistry and a bunch of other fun things. Welcome to episode 16. So I know, guys, it's been a long time since my last podcast. Well, technically, my podcast came out, I think, a couple weeks ago, but it was for week 6, and I am on week 10 right now. So, yeah, it's been a long time. Again, it's not that I don't have time to do this podcast. Currently, I don't have a lot of patient lab work, so all the time that I've spent is usually studying, and I'm not studying 24/7, so I definitely don't have an excuse for not doing this podcast, but yet here we are, week 10, 4 weeks later. So let's get into what I've been doing. So I really can't remember the specifics of the past 4 weeks. I can do kind of a highlight reel, I guess, of interesting things that I've done in clinic. Of course, I'm in clinic now, treating my own patients, being on rotation, assisting, and one of the cool things that happened recently was that I got to pull my first tooth and then lay down my first suture on a real life patient. So one of the rotations that we get put on is on call, and that is any emergency slash a patient needs to come in for something, kind of visit, we get put on that, or we get put on assisting for people who need help for assisting. And actually, I wasn't on call that day. Actually, I didn't have anything scheduled that afternoon, but a patient had pain and needed to come in, and I was free that afternoon, and I think the scheduler, since I'm the first person alphabetically in my class, because of my last name, they saw that I was free that day, so I got to see this patient. It was not my patient, it's one of my other classmates' patients, but since, again, I'm on call and my classmate who has this patient was in a different rotation, I got to see his patient. So the patient presented with pain, and I went through the whole spiel of tests that we have to do for testing the vitality of the tooth, and eventually it was decided between the patient, myself, and my covering professor that this tooth was going to have to be extracted, and then we have to present any extraction cases back to oral surgery, to the oral surgeons there. And at first they weren't going to do it because this patient did not have a treatment plan, but eventually, a little bit of back and forth, it was decided to extract the tooth out on the floor. Usually we don't do extractions out on the floor unless, the covering professor is willing to do it, or it's a super simple extraction, or we don't have any room back in oral surgery. So it was decided that it was going to be extracted out on the floor, and thankfully I had a D4 helping me. She had, just asked if I needed an assistant before I even knew I was going to extract this tooth, but I was very glad to have her because the D4s are the people who have experience pulling teeth, and if you're a D3, you're not an operator for oral surgery. If you are an operator, it's usually for a post-extraction, like a post-op visit. But she was there and was helping me. She got all the equipment that we needed and then kind of coached me through the steps. But I got to pull it out, and then I got to put down a suture. So that was pretty cool, and honestly, being on call is where I see more of the interesting stuff or the crazy things. Like a couple of weeks ago, I was on call and I was back in endo, and someone came in with a swelling, and I had to express with digital pressure this abscess-like swelling on this patient's tooth. It was suggested to this patient to be numbed up for it because obviously it was going to hurt. Unfortunately, the patient was very nervous around needles, so she decided not to have any local anesthetics, and obviously it hurt, but I was able to express some exudate and sent her on her way, and she was actually referred to our grad endo program. So yeah, being on call, I see more of the interesting stuff, but honestly, that's where I learn the most. The less that I know about things going in, I really can't, be in a spiral of anxiety, wondering what should I do if this happens or whatever. When I'm on call, I really have very little information to work off of because it's usually not my patient and whatever, so I usually have very little information, and I'm just gonna have to do it whether or not I'm comfortable with it because that person needs to be taken of right then and there. So that's kind of the interesting things that I've been doing this last 4 weeks. Between last podcast and this podcast. So coming up on Monday, my school puts on Give Kids a Smile, which is a chance for people to bring their kids in and get dental care for free. And this usually takes up all day. Everyone from D1 through D4s have to participate in this day and treat patients. So as D4s, you get to be the operator and, get to do the treatment on the kids and whatever. As a D3, you're the assistant. As a D2, you're kind of shadowing, but also the runner for anything that they might need. And then the D1s are usually in the gym of our school, and they do like little activities for the kids before or after they get treated. So I'm actually looking forward to this Give Kids a Smile because I actually can be an assistant for the last 2 years. And I know I just said that D1s are usually in the gym doing stuff with the kids, but when I was a D1, they didn't have enough people out on the floor in the main clinic, so as a D1, I got to be the person who shadowed and the runner. So I didn't really do anything, and as a D2, I didn't really do anything either. I kind of just followed them around and got whatever they needed. But as a D3, I get to assist more, and it's more pertinent now being in clinic, having done things on kids, that I get to see like a firsthand of how pediatrics is run, and just, pediatrics is very fast, and you gotta get really good at being fast with kids, and that's something that I'm still working on as I treat my own pediatric patients, but it is a good learning experience for sure, doing Give Kids a Smile, and it's a good opportunity to help those who are in need of dental care. So moving into the hot and nots of this week, the hot was definitely getting to extract a tooth and to lay down a suture, and the knot was also extracting a tooth and laying down a suture. It's a hot knot because it was really cool to do, like looking back on it, like I can't believe I pulled my own first tooth, but also in the moment, having not done that, and also, again, D3s are not usually operators for that, I was very nervous, but again, I can't really think about those things in a moment, I just had to get that tooth out. And again, very thankful for the D4 that helped me through it. Okay, moving on to my non-dentistry or dental adjacent topic, and it's usually, dental adjacent because I clearly don't have things to talk about outside of dentistry. But recently I posted on my Instagram story a graph that I had put together, and it showed the amount of hours studied in the months of August and September as a D3, a D2, and a D1. So for those who don't know, I have tracked every hour spent studying from my D1 fall semester up until this semester, and I put it all in an Excel spreadsheet, and for that I had just kind of amassed the data. I just wanted to see how it compared from my D1 to D3 year and to see the differences of it. And for those who are watching, I have pulled it up right now. For those who are listening, hopefully I'm able to describe it well to you, but basically I have an Excel spreadsheet, and if I'm looking off screen, it's because I'm looking at my spreadsheet. It's on a different screen than my main screen that's right now recording. So I put everything in an Excel spreadsheet, and you can see that I have the week here, the days of the week, and then all my subjects. So these are all my subjects for this fall semester of D3, and then I have a mood column, and this is like my mood based on the day, and this is a 1 to 10 scale, and 10 is not like a oh my gosh, this is a fantastic day, I was, skipping and seeing rainbows or whatever. 10 is like nothing bad happened, and it was like an all-around good day. So that is the mood column, and I do that for every single day, and then the day column here is just, the day of the week, so August 4th, 5th, and whatever. And then if you go over here, this is the studying time. This is the studying time based on the day there is. So in this cell, it's just an equation that's summing all these up for each day, and then divided by 60 just to get it towards like an hour. And then over here I have my subjects listed, all the minutes, and this is, everything that goes down all the way here. So this is like the time amassed of the semester in each subject, and obviously in here this is just it in hours, and then I have the sum down here. And then this was the thing that I had posted on my story. So as you can see here, I have this graph. It's called August Studying Time, with the day being on the x-axis and the hours studied on the y-axis, and then I put in the data from my D1 fall, D2 fall, and D3 fall. And as you can see, as people had seen during it when I had posted it, is that D2 was like my most time studied overall. D1 fall was a lot of hours studied too, and I did have questions asked about this one data point. It's if you click on it, I think it is almost 11 hours. And I went back in my Excel sheet for D1 Fall and looked at this, and it was put in clinical care. And at that point, clinical care was like assisting and stuff. So I don't really know what I was doing it, because I usually don't count the amount of time in class for clinical care as studying time, but it must have been like a HIPAA training or something. So HIPAA training, we have to do it like every year, and you have to spend a certain amount of time in each module before you go on. So I assume that I was in like a module and just like spending a certain amount of time, because that is the only way that I can explain why this is. Either that, or it was just a mistake in my counting, so that might be an outlier. Again, I've had people ask what that was, and I honestly don't know what. And, the only thing I can assume was that I was in a module for HIPAA, and I had to stay in that module, and I just like sat down one day and just like finished all the modules all at once. So for our studying, what I include is usually the time spent outside of class studying, and I do this based on my, I start timing when I start doing Quizlets or start studying, and then I end the timer and then put it in. And I round it to the nearest 0 or 5. So let's say I study for 12 minutes, I would round down to 10. And I'm only going to round up to like a larger number if it's like within a minute or a minute and a half. So like if I do 13 and a half minutes, I would probably round that up to 15. But if it was like 13, I would probably round it down to 10. And that usually evens it out. I have thought about doing like the exact time studying, but I kind of like these nice numbers, so I usually keep it like that. And it kind of evens out because I usually am underestimating the time I studied. And I used to do it like I was only allowed to do it if I was outside of class studying, but since I work on my study guides in class, like I'm writing down questions and I'm filling in information of my study guides during class, I count that as time studied. And in there, I'm not really timing myself, but I usually estimate the time spent on the study guide within class now, based on times that I have spent on the study guide outside of class when I actually have been timing it, so I just estimate it off of that, and I'm pretty close now that I've been doing this for a long time. I'm pretty accurate with my estimation of how long that I've spent in class working on a study guide, and I'm never gonna put down like, I've worked 50 minutes on the study guide in class, because I usually am never working that much typing. The highest I've ever been is like 30 minutes, and that's if I'm like straight up typing for the entirety of the class. And of course, when I'm studying outside of class, doing the Quizlets or doing summary sheets, I'm obviously counting those as hours studied as well. And in my lab classes, if I was working outside of lab on it, then I was counting that as time studied as well in that class. And now, since I'm in clinic, if I spend time outside of clinic either calling patients or something, or, mounting patient cases, I'm counting that as clinic time studied. So that's why you can see the clinic column filled in sometimes. And I'm currently not doing a lot of patient work, so there's not a bunch of time. There has been some, because that was usually like mounting patient cases, so if you see something going into like the hundreds or something, that's usually just me mounting a patient case. And I'm trying to get faster at mounting patient cases. It shouldn't take me as long as it takes me, but I'm getting there slowly and surely. So another thing I do is track my mood, like I was talking about. It's on a 1 to 10 scale, and I put the day of the month and then the mood that correlates with that day, and then I put it into a table that looks like this, or a graph that looks like this. That is a table, that is a graph. I think I started doing this during my spring semester of my last year of undergrad, and actually I started tracking my hours studied. It really started out as seeing how much time I spent in and out of lab, because I was in a lot of lab heavy classes, and I wanted to see how much time I was actually spending on these lab classes. And also it helped me keep track of hours spent studying before an exam, so it helped me to see like how much time did I spend studying on this exam, and then what grade I got for it. And obviously that's not a perfect, correlation, because in dental school I found that sometimes I've studied, hours upon hours and not gotten like a great grade. So that doesn't always work, but it kind of helped me back in the day when it was easier to kind of predict those things. And then mood, I was just seeing if the amount of time studied for that day correlated with the mood. And obviously, again, that's not a perfect correlation or causation, but it's a cool thing to look back on now, and it's just like a fun thing that I do now. And then if it's something that's not a 10, sometimes I put the reason why it was on that day just as a note so I can see, but usually I don't do that. But I mean, here you can see some of them, and look, I literally just said that I didn't do it, but here it is. Some of the 9s have been long clinic days, and then a 9, I usually have, pretty predictable 9s during the semester. It's usually when I've been home on break, and then I'm going back down to Alton, and I usually put that as a 9, because I don't like leaving my family, but obviously I have to be down here for dental school, so that's automatically a 9, because I'm pretty bummed to be going back down to Alton away from my family. So those are pretty predictable 9s, and you can probably see some of them. Well, that was the first day of school, and so first day of school is always rough. But some of these are probably, going home, because I've been on break, and I've tried to go home more now that I have a little bit more time, and so some of these 9s are definitely going home, but some of them have been like long clinic days. And honestly, I'm pretty curious to see how my mood has changed, or if there has been any like drastic changes between my D1 fall and D2 fall versus my D3 fall. So because I have them all in with one spreadsheet, and right here, right now, I can go back and see. So here are my mood tables for D1 fall, and we can see, oh my. Yeah. What happened here? I probably can figure that out, but yeah. D1 fall is a rough semester. It's your first time being there, first of all, and then you have a butt ton of classes, and you're learning hand skills for the first time, so I'm really not surprised to see that this is all over the place for August and kind of September. Kind of evened out, but you can see it dipping down. And for D1 fall, I think I can pretty much remember that any time I was doing operative, I was probably not having a good day, because it took me a long time to figure out hand skills, so that was probably some of these that I could see. Then let's see for my D2 fall semester. Okay, so I'm assuming that I'm gonna just take a wild stab and assume any of these days that were kind of like down here was because of complete dentures. I was taking that my D2 fall, and I remember one day that I was trying to make a base plate, and you're supposed to put a separator, because when you put the base plate material on the cast and then put it to cure, if you take it out, it can like stick onto the stone and break. Well, it's not that I didn't have the separator on. I had the separator on. I was trying to take off the base plate, and the base plate broke, and then the stone came with it. So it was not a good day, let's just say that. I had to start over, I had to pour up the cast again, and then I had to make the base plate again. And I used Vaseline the second time instead of All-Coat, and it worked for me. It came off, and obviously I was on my way. But that was not a fun day, so I assume one of these was because of complete dentures, or any of them. Wouldn't be surprised if any of these down days were during complete dentures. And I know I did this for my studying time in August, September, but it would kind of be interesting to add these data points onto my mood graph for August and September of this semester. And since I have you guys here, and since it's my podcast and I can do whatever I want, I'm going to do that right now. So let's go back to the mood tables for this fall, and then we're going to click on the graph and then add data. So first of all, I'm going to edit this to say D3 fall. Okay, so I have changed that to be D3 fall, and unfortunately you can't see me selecting data for some reason. I don't know why, but it's on my other screen. So I'm selecting data, and then I'm adding data points. So the series name is going to be now D2 fall. And then my X value, I'm going to go to my D2 fall mood table here, and then I'm going to set the X value to be the August days. So to the 31st, and then the y-axis to be the moods for that month. Okay, now I have my D2 fall on there, and then I'm going to add one more data series, and that's going to be D1 fall. And then my X values are going to be the August from my D1 fall. And there's probably an easier way to do this, but this is the way that I'm doing it and did it for my studying time. If there's an easier way, I couldn't tell you. My dad could probably tell me, because everything I've learned from Excel is usually from him, or it's from doing stuff in undergrad. And so he could probably tell me if there's an easier way to do this, but I can't repeat the numbers for it for August because I didn't always start on the same day because of the way the years fell. So now I have, you can't see this, my data screen, but I have D1 fall, D2 fall, and D3 fall in August set. So now if we go over here, you can see all of them, and if I add a legend, you can see that D1 fall is in gray, D2 fall is in the orange, and then D3 fall is in the blue. And I'm pleased to see that I can't see much of D3 fall because it's overlaid between all the 10s from D2 fall and D1 fall, so they're all hidden underneath the orange and grays. And then you can see in D1 fall I had a lot less stable of a mood, I would say, because you can see all these points that are dropped down. And then orange was D2 fall, and that was a little bit more stable, but you did see some of these points that were pretty down, and I would, credit that to being complete dentures. So, yes, that is interesting to say the least. It'd be curious to see if this is the same for other D3s, if they felt that, D3 fall in August, their mood was better than, the August of D2 fall and D1 fall as well. And I can't say this is the same for everybody in dental school, but hopefully by sharing that one graph of my studying time, that it's hope for all y'all out there that it does get easier. Obviously D2 was a lot harder than D1, at least for me, so maybe it gets worse before it gets better, and maybe that will change. I'd be curious to see D4 fall. That I'm hopefully would be taking care of patients more, and if that, ever gets up to the amount of time I've ever spent studying in D2, but it'd be interesting to see as a D4 how that looks. So when I'm a D4, I'll probably do this again and we can talk about it later. Yeah, now you know that I spend way too much time graphing this stuff out, and it's honestly not that too much time. I do it because I'm obsessed with numbers. I get that from my dad as well. And honestly, it's cool to look back on and see all this data that I've pulled from myself and see it on, laid out on a table and laid out in graphs. But anyway, that's all for now. Thank you for listening or watching. Hopefully I upload this because it's not really going to make sense to anyone who's listening because they can't see it or see what I was doing or see what I was talking about. I've been pretty bad with uploading things to YouTube, but I will try to be better, and I'll try to be better at uploading podcasts and try to be better at doing reels. I love doing Instagram reels, and it's not that I don't have ideas for them. Like some people don't do Instagram reels because they don't have any ideas of what to do in them. I have a whole list of Instagram reels. It's just that I don't usually take the time out of my day to do Instagram reels, but I hope to get back in the swing of things and doing stuff like that. So whether you watched or listened to this, thank you very much for doing that. I often feel like I'm talking to the void, but if there's one person in there with me, then it's no longer a void. If you have a question that you'd like me to answer, either about dentistry or not at all related to dentistry, DM me on Instagram or send a carrier pigeon my way. That's all for now. I'll see you in the next episode.